Okay, I'm gonna give you the 4 sessions to qualify for Boston or London marathons. 2 long runs, 2 interval sessions that will get you on the start line, ready to execute and run the 2-hour 53 that you need to run in order to qualify for Boston this year or London for 2026. Imagine doing all that work to get your sub 3, to think you're qualifying for Boston, when in actual fact, there's a 6 or 7 minute buffer for you to be able to gain that automatic entry. And I'm going to show you with these key sessions that it's actually just as hard to run a 2-hour 59 marathon than it is to run a 2-hour 53 marathon. And although there's 6 minutes in between that, 360 seconds, I'm gonna break it down to show you what that pace difference is and how the sessions directly feed into you running 2 hours and 53 and leaving no doubt at all as to whether you've qualified for Boston or are good for age for London. I'm Lee Grantham, a coach and professional ultra runner who went from running a marathon in 4 hours and 25 minutes to running a marathon in 2 hours and 21 minutes. And within an 11-month period, I went from 3 hours and 25 for the marathon to 2 hours and 37 minutes. That's a 48-minute jump. And I did that because I started to do the right things well. And if you want to make massive improvements in your marathon time, you want a serious breakthrough, and you want to start doing the right things consistently well and get them working for you, then book a call in the description and we can see if we're a coaching fit. Now we know what we need to do for that sub 3 marathon. To run 2:59, we've got to run 4:15 per kilometer or 6:52 per mile. To leave no doubt at all and to get that automatic entry to run 2:53, we need to run 9 seconds per kilometer faster, 4:06 per kilometer, or 16 seconds per mile faster, 6:36 per mile. So let's lock in on that 4:06 per kilometer or 6:36 per mile. That's all we care about. And let's also set ourselves up for success. What do I mean by that? At this point in your marathon journey, you're aiming for really big things. Not everybody can qualify for good for age for London or automatic entry to Boston. So by this point, you're serious enough that you understand the importance of sleep, high quality sleep and lots of it, reduce stress, and having a good diet and getting towards that optimal weight. Now, I get it all the time. I still want to keep my physique. I want to be as fast as I possibly can in a marathon, but I want to keep that upper body strength. I completely get it. And can you run 2:53 with that extra 5-10 kilograms of muscle? Absolutely you can. Is it going to be more difficult? Absolutely it is. And don't forget, I'm 63 kilograms wet through, but I came from 83 kilograms. And that first 10 kilograms that I lost, really easy, just comes off as a byproduct. To get from 73 kilograms to 63 kilograms, that takes a lot of effort, and it's a lot more than just coming off as a byproduct. Did it make my running a lot faster and a lot easier? Yeah, my intervals got faster, my long runs got faster, my racing got much faster. And I pushed it to the limit. I thought, okay, I'm at 63 kilograms, I'm quick. If I get to 60 kilograms, I'm gonna be even quicker. Big mistake. And then I got towards my limit and I would go out for an easy run in the morning, have to get straight back in bed, absolutely exhausted, was working against me. And that fine line is something that you don't want to go too close to, and you definitely don't want to go over. And a lot of girls find that out in terms of performances get faster and faster and faster. They're winning races, all of a sudden stress fracture. Don't go anywhere near that. You want your progress to be completely upwards. And before I get onto the sessions, you're also serious enough that you're running 6 times a week. You're keeping that rest day super important to reset the body and know that you have that rest day, which in turn is going to improve the quality of all your running and keep the consistency over the weeks and months in the training schedule. And you're running those runs first thing in the morning on your best energy, so you're getting the absolute most out of those runs. Yes, but that running, that clarity of mind, productivity, increased energy is also crossing into the rest of your life. It's a superpower. And the final point before I get onto the key sessions is your nutrition. You not only understand how serious this is, it is the difference in you completing your dream time in the marathon and not completing it on race day. Yes, of course, but get that working for you in the training, get optimal. Get to 75 to 80 grams of carbohydrate and get it working for you on interval day and long run day. Not only is that preparing the stomach to race so it feels like second nature, also getting higher quality sessions because you're not getting the same level of muscle breakdown, and you're restocking that glycogen before it's getting depleted, and so your recovery is enhanced. So guess what? You're able to push more when it really counts in the week. Remember, as a 2:53 marathon runner, what we're looking for is not one great session, we're looking for 20, 22, 24 great sessions over the course of a training schedule. And can you go from running 3 hours and 15 minutes for the marathon to running 2:53? It's my absolute conviction that you can. So here are 4 key sessions that I would do, and if I could complete these sessions at the paces that I'm going to tell you, I would be more than confident, along with the rest of the training, to step on the start line and be ready to hold that 4:06 per kilometer pace or 6:36 per mile for the entire duration of the marathon. Session number 1, 12 times 1 kilometer with just 60 seconds rest in between. Now, initially, that might look like you're running those kilometers in 4:06 or 6:36 per mile. You're running them at marathon pace, and that's great. You're building time and moving over the ground at marathon pace, and that's going to serve you really well because you're becoming very efficient at moving over the ground at the pace that you want to run the entire marathon in. What I would want to do with that session is gradually nudge that pace up and get to a point where I could execute 12 times a kilometer with 60 seconds rest in between at 3:45 per kilometer. So just over 10% faster than marathon pace. What that's gonna do is give you a lot of confidence. 12 times a kilometer, small amount of rest, 60 seconds. You're keeping the heart rate high, but over the weeks and months, the heart rate is going to quickly come back to a heart rate that you can then manage the entire session and the next rep, and you're running those reps quite a bit quicker than marathon pace. But don't strive for those paces. Let those paces come to you. So as I said, if that starts at marathon pace, even if it starts at the marathon pace that you're at the moment, and you gradually nudge that on week after week after week and gradually let that 4:06 per kilometer or 6:36 per mile, you're doing the 12 times 1 kilometer at that pace and then getting quicker. That's how you do it. And that's a sensible runner who's gradually moving towards becoming that 2:53 marathon runner. Session number 2, specific long run. And I love this long run, and I talk about it a lot on this channel. All we're gonna do is 24 kilometers or 15 miles. It's a progression run. There's 2 different variants of it that you can do to put yourself in a really good place to get on that start line and be incredibly confident to run that marathon in 2:53. All we're gonna do is warm up properly. Warm up to a point that that first section, that first 8 kilometers or 5 miles isn't a shock to the system. That pace isn't a shock to the system. And we're gonna split the run into 3. So 8 kilometers or 5 miles, middle 8 kilometers or 5 miles, final 8 kilometers or 5 miles. And then we're gonna cool down. Incredibly important, gradually let the heart rate come down, clear that lactate from the blood. It's gonna make your runs more consistent. Then we gradually bringing that down to a walk. You're feeling good, you're feeling like, okay, the session is already soaking in, and then you're getting a recovery shake afterwards. Pacing wise, exactly the same as those 12 times 1 kilometer. You wanna finish that 8 kilometer block or 5 mile block at 4:06 per kilometer pace. That's what we're aiming at. We're aiming to finish at marathon pace, at the intended marathon pace of 2:53. So 4:06 per kilometer, 6:36 per mile. The middle block is plus 10%, so 10% slower than that marathon pace. And the first block, 20% slower. So we're starting the run 20% slower. It's nice and in our control. And then that second 8 kilometer or 5 minute block is just 10% slower than marathon pace. So we then start to need to focus, think about what we're doing, and execute, and then get onto marathon pace. So right when the perceived effort is at its highest at the end of the run, that's when we're doing the marathon pace. It's a very specific run, but what it's gonna do is help you to finish fast, help you to negative split, and build a lot of confidence that you can get on the start line, because remember, you're doing that on fatigue legs, you're doing that in the middle of the training block. You can get to the start line and execute that 4:06 pace or 6:36 per mile and run 2:53 for the marathon. Now again, if you need to bring that pace down for the final 8 kilometers or 5 miles, and that's your current marathon pace or 3-hour marathon pace of 4:15 per kilometer or 6:52 per mile, and then 10% slower and 20% slower, and that's your starting point, still a great run. And then over the weeks and months, you can gradually push that pace up. Session number 3, 5 times 10 minutes with 60 seconds rest in between. And we're gonna run those at slightly quicker than marathon pace. So if that needs to start at intended marathon pace, 4:06 per kilometer or 6:36 per mile, that 2:53 marathon pace, that's where we start. If it needs to start slower than that, and again, over the weeks and months, you're gradually pushing towards that pace, great. If we can get that to 3:55 per kilometer or 3:50 per kilometer, again, you're in a wonderful place, running a lot of volume, 50 minutes of volume with very little rest in between. So you're keeping the heart rate high and watching it come down very, very quickly in between reps as you're getting fitter. You're also seeing those 5 humps, those 5 mountains. There's not as much heart rate drift as there was in the beginning because your body is able to handle it. You're able to handle it because you're getting better as an athlete. That is a session that will always work for you, 5 times 10 minutes. And I got to a point where for my marathon pace, I knew that if I can handle 5 times 10 minutes at just marathon pace, because I was often doing that in hot countries where it was 25, 30, 35 degrees Celsius, I knew I would be racing at 12 degrees Celsius. Then I knew with that extra advantage, I just needed to run them at marathon pace. And again, to make it easier, let that pace come to you. So if that's 5 times 10 minutes and you're pushing, but you're controlling the session, knowing that you can do the 2nd and 3rd rep, the perceived effort is going to be higher in the 4th and 5th rep, but you're controlling the session, you're recovering well in between, and that ends up to be 4:15 per kilometer or 6:52 per mile, then great, that's your starting point at the moment, and it's a great session of 15 minutes where you're at the moment for the marathon. And remember, again, I cannot say this enough, that it's not about one session. It's about 20, 24 sessions that you're doing consistently well. And if one day you get out there, you're just not feeling that 4:06 pace or 6:36 per mile, and that ends up being slower, don't strive for that extra pace to prove to yourself that you're fit enough to run that 2:53. That's where people get in trouble. Remember that you're on fatigued legs, it's not perfect right now, and you're building that 2:53 marathon runner. Session number 4. Now I knew if I could do this out there alone on a training run, not in a race, then I was already ready to execute the pace that I was aiming for in the marathon. All that we're gonna do is a 26 kilometer long run or a 16-mile long run, and we're gonna do the middle 16 kilometers or 10 miles at marathon pace. So in kilometers, that would look like 5 kilometers easy in zone 2, gradually ramping up in that 4th and 5th kilometer to the pace that you wanna hold, that marathon pace that you wanna hold for the entire middle section of 16 kilometers. And on the back end, 5 kilometers easy, but gradually letting the heart rate drift down. The perceived effort is going to be higher then, back into zone 2. And in miles, 3 miles easy, 10 miles in the middle at marathon pace, 3 miles easy on the back end. In order to execute that really well and prime your body to do it, you've got to warm up properly and you've got to keep that cool down consistent, which will help you recover faster from the sessions, and it's going to help the consistency over the weeks and months. 10 miles is a big chunk of distance to do out there alone as a marathon runner, and it really feeds into building a lot of confidence for you to get on the start line, knowing that with that race day energy, fresher legs after the taper, and all these sessions working for you and compounding over the weeks and months, you can get on that start line and we can execute. And remember, that's essentially what we're building. We're building this animal that can get out there alone, execute, do that marathon pace for a set amount of miles or kilometers, which is actually a lot less than what we want to hold for the entire duration of a marathon, but we're doing it alone. We're getting it done. We're getting up first thing in the morning. We're hydrating. We're going through the same routine that we're going to do on race morning. To everything's familiar on race morning. Same breakfast. Getting into the gel strategy or sports drink strategy. We're hitting that 75 grams to 80 grams of carbohydrate per hour, and you're making it happen out there alone when nobody is watching. And you know yourself, you're more proud of runs like that when nobody's watching than you showing up at Boston Marathon or London Marathon where there's 50,000 people there and you are so excited. The hair on the back of your neck is standing up. You got all those fans, you got all those runners around you. You tuck in into a group, you've got that windbreak. Easy to execute on race day. Remember, you're putting all this effort in all this effort into your marathon training, sacrificing all these hours, I don't see it as a sacrifice. I see it as you putting a lot of energy into something that means a lot, not just for your running, but for the rest of your life. And if you're putting all that energy into qualifying for Boston or getting that good for age for London or any other marathon, why not remove all doubt and run the time that will give you a much bigger chance of getting that automatic qualification? And just as a disclaimer, remember, we're getting faster. More and more people are running, those times are getting quicker. But if you run that 2 hour 53 and you think you're qualified or you deserve to qualify for Boston, and then it's 2:52 or 2:51 that year, guess what you are? You're a 2 hour 53 marathon runner that's got to find 3 or 4 minutes in order to definitely qualify the year after. And if you want some more great long runs, here's a couple of videos that will help you out.